Ladies and gentlemen, so Bobby Lee has confirmed that he signed TigerBelly to a bigger company, and he did this on that one episode of Impulsive that we actually talked about. But here's the thing. No one is talking about this, and I find it interesting because when something like that happens, when somebody signs a big deal like that, it's a huge thing. It's a big deal. But when Bobby announced it, he didn't sound too excited about that. So is there a chance that he is doing that as an attempt to get away from Kalila, or did he have a fallout with All Things Comedy and Bill Burr for that matter? So I thought it would be fun to take a look. So let's get started.
Bobby,
Yeah.
did you break up with this girl live on the podcast? Because that's good material.
No, but we did address it on the podcast and we talk about it. And listen, we're best friends. We did this podcast 7-8 years ago. It's a success. We just signed to do it on a bigger company, and we moved on. And it's a good business, but you can still mindfully break up with somebody that you love with and still work with them and still have love.
Of course.
And all that resentment and anger, you deal with that as, but I love her. I've loved all my girlfriends and I still have relationships with them.
We don't have any details about the deal, but based on what Bobby Lee said, he said that it was good business and it was good money. So according to that, it's a good deal, but we don't know any details about if it's going to remain free on YouTube, if the podcast will be available for free on YouTube, or if he will be exclusively with a platform, because if that's the case, that would be a bold move. Now, the most basic and possible answer is that they did it for money and that it's worth it. But if you want to speculate, you could see this as an attempt from Bobby Lee to try and get the studio out of his house and into an actual studio or an office or a building, whatever. And it would also make things easier for Bobby Lee on the negotiating side. Like if he needs to do something that involves Kalila, instead of talking it, directly with her and having emotions being involved, he can just, talk to his company, whoever his manager will be or whatever, how that'll be working, and then, arrange something that way. That's from that perspective, that's what I think could happen. Or it could be a situation where he saw that All Things Comedy, his partnership with Bill Burr, wasn't the best move for him, in which case, naturally, you leave and move on to different things. But here's what I find very interesting about the whole situation. Bert Kreischer literally just left All Things Comedy about 2 months or 3 months ago, and he has addressed it on the podcast and was also able to take Something's Burning, the show that he does on YouTube, and has it now on his own channel, which we'll get to in a second.
All Things. I did a Something's Burning with them. We'll show. This, by the way, thank you for everyone who's been supporting All Things Comedy's videos and the Something's Burning. There's a poker one right there, as you can see. Bert Kreischer, Chiapino with they're moving a little fast. I'm not the quickest reader. Wheeler Walker Jr. and Leanne Kreischer, Nashville Hot Chicken. I love the way they're editing these.
So basically right now, Bobby Lee is with All Things Comedy, which is, again, a platform founded by Bill Burr, Bert, and other comics, I believe Bobby himself as well, which was designed to allow comics to, host their content on there and still allow them to have full control. Based on what Bobby said, he will soon be with a different company. And while I was looking for some clues about who that company could possibly be, I came across some Reddit posts or some comments out there that were speculating to a huge fallout between Bill Burr and the LA comedy scene, which I thought was very interesting because something like that had crossed my mind in the past, but I never put the two together. And I think you'll find this very, very interesting. Obviously, what I'm about to say is pure speculation. I have no proof of this, and it's a huge reach, but there is a few things that I find weird that don't add up about how Bert Kreischer left All Things Comedy and left his partnership with Bill Burr. So the first thing, obviously, is that Bert Kreischer was signed to All Things Comedy, and he used to do Something's Burning, his YouTube show, on their platform exclusively. Ever since about 2 months ago, he has been uploading them directly on his YouTube channel. The first one was with Bobby Lee and Mark Norman, which completely crushed it. I believe it already has over 2 million views, which is insane. And every other episode that he has been uploading, the Something's Burning, has been crushing it. It's killing it. And the new format is a little bit different. So you could argue that there was some creative differences maybe of how Bert wanted to take or do the show and where to take the show in the future. Maybe. Now, the second thing is that Bert and Bill had a podcast together called Bill Bert Podcast or something like that, where they were like drink whiskey and smoke cigars and talk in front of a van, if I remember correctly. And not only did they obviously stop doing the podcast, but they nuked the entire catalog. They completely deleted every episode, and you can't really find it unless it's through like random clips through a YouTube channel. The third and final thing is that this whole drama speculation just happens to be in a timeline that adds up. For example, Bill Burr had a huge fallout with a lot of people during the whole thing that happened in 2019, 2020 that divided a lot of people, and he distanced himself clearly from the people who thought certain beliefs and whatnot. So you can argue that plus Bert's, him going under control with the drinking and the partying and all that stuff was a bit differently of a lifestyle that Bill Burr was living with which I remember him talking on his podcast that he was laying off the booze and trying not to smoke cigars, and it was pretty hard and all this stuff. So I can obviously see how a podcast with Bert about smoking that mainly revolves about around smoking cigars and drinking would probably not work out in the long term.
Known her.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And by the way, you're going to deal with that your whole career, is that people are going to be like, I already saw you do stand up one time. It wasn't my thing.
Yeah. But
let me tell you something. I watched Bill Burr 23 years ago, 22 years ago when I started, 23, 24 years ago, whenever I started. And it wasn't my cup of tea because he was not who he is today.
wow.
It wasn't my cup of tea. I like Brian Regan better. It was okay, but it was like very like high energy, very clean, very, very identifiable. You were like, oh no, I'm familiar with that kind of act.
Now, here's where I got frustrated a little bit. I remember watching this video a few months ago or a few weeks ago, and I could not find it. I looked for hours, and I even went through the podcast transcript and looked for word keywords, and I could not find it. But it was essentially a video of a guest asking Bert Kreischer about Bill Burr, and Bert getting a bit nervous and awkwardly responding to the question with, the typical, let me say this, yada, yada. And then he explained how it was in his best interest to leave all things comedy. Obviously, he didn't say anything negative about Bill Burr, but the only clue that I could find of Burr saying anything remotely close to being negative about Bill Burr was that video. But at the end of the day, I doubt it. I don't think there was any huge fallout between them, just because All Things Comedy, the platform, was founded by Bill Burr and Bert Kreischer. So, and it was meant to allow comics the freedom to to do what they want with their content. So I don't think there was a fallout regarding the business side of that. Maybe there were some personal differences, and I can definitely see that being a thing. But regarding to the Bobby Lee situation, it will be interesting once the details of the deal come out, because we will know if everything is remaining the same, or if he's going exclusively with, like, imagine if he signs to like Amazon or something like that, where you got to get Prime to listen to TigerBelly. I don't know. I doubt it, but we will see. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, if you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. It helps out a ton, and we are trying to get to 20,000 subscribers, so I really appreciate that. Dislike if you don't like the video, but that is all we have for today. See ya.